for January 21st, 2021 is called to order at 4:03 p.m. The next commission monthly business meeting will be at 12 noon, Thursday, February 4th, 2021, and it will be a virtual hearing via WebEx. The next commission hearing will be at 4 p.m. Thursday, February 18th, 2021, and it will also be a virtual hearing via WebEx. Next item on the agenda is the swearing in of staff. I believe Connie's the only one here this evening. Do you swear to tell the truth in your testimony before the commission this evening? If so, say I do. State your name and your position.
Connie Torbeck, Assistant Preservation Officer for the City of Columbus. I do.
Thank you. Our next order on the agenda is our roll call of the attendees. When you hear your name, please say here or present. Jackie Barton.
Present.
Stuart Gibney. Let the record show that Stuart Gibney is not present. He may be joining us later. Joseph McCabe.
Present.
And Aaron Prosser. Let the record show that Aaron Prosser is currently not present. And I am Clyde Henry, and I am acting chair this evening. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the December 17th, 2020 meeting. Are there any questions or concerns on those minutes? Hearing none, would someone move to approve?
So moved.
Okay, Joseph McKay to approve.
Yes, move to second.
Okay, a motion on the floor. Any discussion? If not, we will call the roll call vote. Jack.
Yes.
Just Abe?
Yes.
Yes. The minutes pass. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the staff approvals. Are there any questions on these? If not, do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion to approve staff approvals, Jackie Barton.
Thank you.
Second, Joseph McCabe.
Okay, I have a second. Any further discussion? If not, I will call the vote. Joseph McCabe?
Yes.
Jackie Barton?
Yes.
And I, Clyde Henry, also vote yes. The motion carries. Next item is a public forum. I believe Kevin Wheeler is here to do a presentation on comprehensive zoning code update. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's good to see a lot of you that I have not talked to for a while. I will be pretty brief. I'm going to share the screen. Okay, so wanted to just bring you up to date, let you know that the city has begun a process to update the zoning code. And, you know, this presentation is something I use with lots of different groups. You guys are pretty familiar with zoning and the differences between zoning and policy, and its importance as a tool for encouraging investment, or in some cases for being a challenging thing for folks to work through. One of the things that you may not realize about our code is that it hasn't been updated in a comprehensive way since the 1950s. So as the city's growth trajectory is changing, we're looking at a lot of things that we use to manage growth and determining whether or not we need to revisit them, and zoning is one of those things. This chart on the left shows the city's growth by decade in square miles. And if you've been around for a while, then you know the city has grown pretty dramatically. In 1950, we were 40 square miles. Today, we're 220. You also see that that pattern of growth has changed pretty markedly in the last few decades. And while we continue to see annexation, it's really much less prevalent. And for a lot of reasons that are too complex for this discussion, we don't really see that changing very much. On the right, we have a chart that tracks population change by decade. And the last 3 bars are the next 30 years, the next 3 decades. And really, this is a pretty steady increase, the biggest difference being that previous growth has taken really the form of suburban development largely. In fact, our central city has lost population. That's begun to change, and we see the city getting denser just as a consequence of our growth projection. Another 300,000 people by 2050, roughly, which is pretty comparable to what we saw in the past 30 years. Growth trends, you guys are well acquainted with this. Folks are interested in walkable neighborhoods. Housing costs are rising. Households are getting smaller, both as a consequence of aging population, but just smaller households, period. And therefore, there's an interest in more multifamily, smaller homes, smaller lots. Doesn't mean that there won't be a market for single family, detached, and larger lot settings. It's just a smaller portion of the market as we move forward. People interested in options for transit and a host of other things. So again, we see a future that will not be as marked by territorial growth. And we see continued investment within the central city, and this commission is among those, well, on the front row seat of that. So questions that we're asking are where will people live and work? How will they get around? What will our neighborhoods look like? And how will we provide opportunity for our residents? So we are working with CODA, Morpsey, and others on exploring how we can improve transit. We just saw the completion of the regional housing strategy by Morpsey to look at how Columbus and its partner jurisdictions can address the gap in availability of affordable housing. And we also are working on sustainability as a city, looking at ways that our programs and policies can be updated to make us more sustainable in the future. And then zoning is what we're going to be focused on for this particular project. As we look at our zoning code in the future, we know we need to figure out how to accommodate growth. There's a strong interest in affordability and how we might encourage that. Zoning in the past has been used often, unfortunately, as a tool to exclude. And one of the things that we want to do is look at maybe ways in which we can use zoning to promote equity. There's a whole host of these things. I'm going to be giving this presentation to Connie, and she'll distribute it to you so you can go through this in your own time frame if you'd like to look at it more closely. Just a couple more slides. So when you update a zoning code for a city like Columbus, it is a very complicated process. And we're breaking it down into 2 phases. I hope it's 2. The first phase is to assess the existing code, look at the code, the process, what's working, what's not working, what kinds of things do we need to be giving attention to. And the culmination of this first phase, which is set to wrap up this coming summer, is kind of a game plan for phase 2, setting the priorities, setting, providing recommendations for public outreach, the timing, et cetera, of phase 2, which we would like to begin this coming fall. Phase 2 I've just described, that's going to be the actual digging into the code language, considering whether map changes are appropriate, where, and really there's no preconceived notions as to what specific changes we would make. We just know that it's important to look at the code broadly and understand ways in which we can be better positioned for the future. You'll be getting in the next week or 2 an email with a link to a survey that we'd like you to fill out. It'll also have a link to our project website, which is going to be super basic, nothing fancy at this phase of the process. You feel free to forward the survey to anybody that you want to, but we really hope that you'll take the time to fill it out. We've got opportunities in the survey to fill in the blank in cases where you feel like maybe we've missed the boat or we don't have the right question that you want to answer. And then there'll be contact information there as well. If you know Tony Calabrese from the Building and Zoning Services Department, he and I are sort of serving as the primary contacts at this point. So feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. So again, I'll give the survey to Connie so you can all get it. I know you've got a full agenda, so I don't want to linger here. If you have any immediate questions, I'll do my best, but otherwise, I'll be happy to talk to you in any other setting. Thank you.
Thank you. That sounded very comprehensive. Any of the commissioners have questions? Okay. Well, then I guess we are ready to move on to applications for certificates of appropriateness. The first one is 1639 and 1641 Brighton Road. Connie, will you take us through that?
Yes, so this has three parts: installing new windows, and as I noted previously, the overall installation of new windows is not an issue because at some point in the past, a previous owner installed vinyl windows without approval, and it wasn't caught. But there will be, if they decide to go through with trying to go for a third unit on the third floor of the building, then they would need the egress window, or may want it anyway. So then the other part would be, and again, depending on whether they're going to go for a third unit, would be a new dormer, and then the front porch to install a treated wood free-floating deck at the second floor balcony. At the business meeting, general comments were that you were generally supportive of a new dormer if the details to match the existing dormer were provided. No revised drawings have been submitted at this time. And also that any egress windows would need to match the style and dimensions of double hung sashes. No revised windows information has been submitted, but I did send to the commissioners a couple of test cases that were approved in the past by this commission. So as I was saying, while not a part of this application, the owner is considering a change of use to add a third floor dwelling unit, which would be a three family dwelling. A portion of the rear yard, my understanding is, would need to be paved to accommodate the new parking requirement with access from Berkeley Road. This would require an increased curb cut and flattening of the sloped side yard. An applicant seeks input as to whether the commission would support these changes. So staff would recommend approval of the installation of a free-floating deck on the second floor porch balcony as submitted. And staff will continue to work with the applicant in regard to appropriate new windows. Staff would not support additional paving of the yard or the increased curb cut or modifying the sloped side yard, which is a contributing landscape feature of this area.
Okay, thank you. Is there a representative of the application here this evening who wishes to speak? Okay, do you swear to tell the truth in your testimony before the commission this evening? If so, raise your hand and say I do, state your name and your association with the project.
Yes, I do. My name is Ed Winkleman. I'm the general contractor for this project on behalf of my investor. Thank you for providing the information, Connie. A couple things you're asking for my input at this point, correct? Or comments?
Yes, sure.
Okay. Yes, the zoning, if we don't foresee the paving, all that other stuff to create a technical zoned third unit, then the dormer is basically a moot point. Because if it's going to stay a use of two units, then the dormer is basically only an addition that we would have needed for that third actual unit. So that being said, that may not be a focal point anymore. But the likeliness obviously would be to keep the 3 unit if you guys were to potentially support a third unit or a third unit change in the zoning part, but if not, don't worry about it. The egress windows, Connie had sent some information about the details for the egress windows, being it that we are replacing the windows anyways. I don't see any harm in just making those egress windows anyways. It's not a great cost to us or my investor. as well as, hey, if people are up there anyways, it's an added feature. If it looks the same as the rest, my viewpoint would be it's not going to change the aesthetics from the outside. It's just an added feature. And then as far as the floating deck, I think, Connie, I don't know if we had discussed it before, and my apologies if I miscommunicated that, but you said it was a treated wood deck. I don't know that that's the direction we wanted to go with, treated and either stained or painted. We also, I was waiting to hear if it would be approved or not, but we also have some composite decking as well, which may match the new painted colors better anyways, and be more of a less maintenance item for the future owner. So those are the three areas I commented on.
Okay, thank you. Let the record show that Stuart Givney, Commissioner, has also joined the meeting.
Thank you.
Commissioner, comments, questions?
Clarify that today, but it sounds as though we are not being asked to approve the dormer or window replacements in today's meeting. Is that true?
That's my not seen rumor yet that we have SV. So I don't know how we can consider the dormer
Commissioner?
anyway. I guess we should. Yes.
Commissioner Henry, I did have a discussion by email with Julie Bullock, who was working on the project, and she is the one that provided information about saying that if there was a third floor unit, then they would need 4 parking spaces. And there's the garage back there that's 2 spaces, but they would also then need to put 2 spaces in the rear yard. So I didn't think that the commission would support that, but maybe you can let the applicants know whether you would or not, because if you don't support that, then there's no way really for them to go to the third.
Connie, from this perspective,
Commissioner, go ahead, Joseph.
Connie, I was going to actually ask in this case, though, even if we may not submit or support extra paving in the backyard, we could go on record as, supporting that the applicant seek variance to a parking requirement, correct?
Yes, you could, but I don't have information yet, and I did talk to Ed a little bit about this by email. As you see, there's a door on the back at ground level, and I let them know that there's been 2 other instances where if that opens onto an original staircase that goes straight to the 3rd floor, that's similar to 2 cases you have approved. But I don't know what's on the inside of that. I don't know where that door goes, so I don't have that information yet.
Can I ask, this may be directly related to Joseph's suggestion about seeking a parking variance. Is there a reason why we wouldn't support this applicant having a 3rd floor unit without adding parking to the site? I mean, I lived on Capitol Hill in DC for 4 years and parked on the street. These historic conditions didn't always require these bonkers parking requirements where everyone
I would have no problem with that. I mean, I think it encourages mass transportation, and certainly in the city we probably don't parking, but
we don't know
yeah.
how many people are going to live in these units or how many cars they're going to have. Or I just saw a presentation on density.
Exactly.
I just don't want to be denying people adding density to their properties on the basis that there's zoning requirements that require 2 cars per person in the parking space. I think
there's street parking also.
Yeah,
they can get a variance. They can get a variance.
I parked on the street for years when I lived in Washington, D.C. area. I think we're a little provincial about this at times.
Well,
Right, and if they can get a variance, I think that would be fine with no
yeah,
parking
Let's-
variance.
let,
And they don't have to put any exterior stairs or doors or whatever.
Yeah.
let's do this. Let's concentrate on the two issues kind of that are at hand if they want to proceed to get a variance. Let the record show that Aaron Prosser has also joined the meeting. So why don't we first talk about the windows, or yeah, let's do the windows first, and then we'll do the deck. Does anybody have any issues with the windows?
Not I.
Okay, if they do with on the third floor, I believe the existing ones are double hung, and so they would have to do the appearance of a double hung at least if they're using it as an exit window. Other than that, I don't have any issues either. What about the deck? The replacement of the deck of that deck.
I guess I don't feel like I have enough information to understand what's going on with this deck as far as drawings or otherwise. I have no objections to the windows. We have drawings before us that show different scope, show different doors. I'm a little bit nervous about providing anything additional based on not having any real drawings of what it is that's being proposed.
Okay.
My understanding was that it was just going to be a floating deck laid over the existing floor.
Correct. I can explain a little bit further if you desire at this point.
Please
while
do.
Judy's working on the print. Floating deck would be the standard deck material, either the wood or the composite, depending on what you guys, whichever suggestion you guys lean us towards is fine with us. But it's basically lays over a 2x6 laid flat as a floating deck over the existing rooftop style second balcony there. So it would be up 1.5 inches plus the thickness of the deck, and it would be wrapped in the front. So I believe during our meeting on the 7th, the pre-meeting, gentleman had said it's only an inch. You're not going to really see it from the street anyways, but in actuality, it'd be about 2.5, 2 3/4 inches, whatever you want to look at. But again, that would just be on the very front of the home on that second level balcony area, the porch deck, whatever you want to describe it as. But yeah, you would.
This is the second floor.
Close.
This is the second floor front porch then, and what is there that's existing that you're covering over exactly?
I believe I had sent a picture to Connie. I don't know if she has that, but it's like a metal tin roof at this point. It's just sheets of metal. So it's really not. It's not attractive for a person to set chairs or a table out there to enjoy the evenings or whatever. You walk around, it's kind of clanky. So I would like to make sure all the seams and stuff are sealed appropriately before putting the floating part of the deck on there. So that is what's up there.
Okay, and just for clarification, you will not be removing the material. You will just be covering with the deck.
That's correct. The only material that would be affected by it would be the guardrails, which I have to raise anyways. So they would just go from that height up to the 36 required by current code. So the current guardrails you see right now are going to have to be modified anyways because Connie and I have been back and forth with communication on that as far as to raise that to the appropriate height now. It just makes more sense because they're super low, but with the same style, just taller. So those would go up as well.
And that will be per National Park Services standards. So it's just adding a horizontal piece across there. It's not creating a whole new baluster there.
So it's not removing the handrails, you're just adding an extra handrail across the top of that?
That's right.
Well, during our discussions, Connie, you said to not remove anything if they do not need repair, and some of those parts do need repair. So
right.
It wouldn't match the same style, obviously.
Yeah, but you're not taking the whole thing out wholesale, just balusters that are rotted and so forth.
Correct. And then adding whatever on the top of that rail to meet current height.
Right. Okay. And also,
Sure that
you can see in that photo, you can see in that photo that there are some doors sitting there, some new doors, but we've talked about that the 3/4 light doors need to be retained, not replaced with new doors.
Any originals that are there will stay as originals.
And also, could I ask the commission, in replacing, because I'll be working with them in the egress windows, and as you can see, they were downsized, and so they're going to have to send me all new measurements on those, and the window supplier understands that now. They'll have to take
Coming back out tomorrow to remeasure.
drywall out on the interior and stuff. So would you prefer that an egress window went on the side rather than on the front, or do you think, does that matter to the commission?
The examples I've seen, Connie, of those egress windows, you can't tell. They should be as consistent as anything else. I think the egress window needs to be dictated by the architect where it's egress. I don't know that we can require that location of the egress window.
Okay, thanks.
And secondarily, maybe as part of any provision, at least I would recommend for approval, handrail modifications. I'd like to see that the general contractor submits to you a sketch of the handrail modification and what it is they're committing to do prior to them proceeding.
Okay.
Are we ready to put this into a motion, or do we have more questions? And I mean, it obviously the motion needs to make clear that we're not approving the dormer, that we're only approving the railing and windows, or if you would prefer to put the deck in a separate motion, we could do that also.
Real quick, I guess, for the applicant, if they're intending to come back with revised dormer drawings, porch drawings, anything else impacting the house, should we split this up into, I guess it is sort of split out into an A-B case already. Should it be split out any further? Just so that the applicant doesn't have to come back through filing a whole other application next month?
That would be much appreciated.
Okay, so what we could do is we could do like a multiple letter and then do the part containing the dormer to continue that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, sounds great.
May I ask one quick question before you guys put your motions
Sure.
through? On the proposed parking variance, is that something I would have to go to the city with and then come back to you guys and say, hey, the variance is good. Now we proceed with the zoning part?
Connie, from a logistics standpoint, can we go on record today of supporting a variance if the applicant applies for one?
I think that would be a good idea, so that when he talks to zoning, he will know that ahead of time, even though it won't be a formal recommendation, because Ed, you would have to come back for a formal recommendation, from the commission about any variances, changing the use and the parking variance.
Right, but at least I would have, hey, they're in support of it.
Right.
Go to the zoning committee and say, hey, you know what, can we make this a 3-unit? If so, we need to make those appropriatenesses and then or adjustments, and then come back to you guys with a dormer sketch from our architect Julie for next month's meeting. But in the meantime, we can at least get going on the project. That's kind of what we're hoping to do, since it's been kind of on hold for a while.
Okay.
Yeah, so that, it could just be added as as comments that, the commission would be in support of it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Sounds good. Who wants to give it a shot?
I can give it a go if you want.
Thank you.
In the case of HR-21-01-10A, we'll keep this A since B is staff approvals. I will move that as part of this approval, we approve the new windows as presented by the applicant. However, with the applicant to follow up with Connie regarding confirmation of all size of windows, location of an egress window, and adequate shop drawings and product information to be reviewed by staff prior to proceeding, and approval of the front porch installation of a treated wood or composite wood free-floating deck system on the second floor front porch as presented by the applicant. The details of any handrail modifications of which to be submitted to staff and approved prior to proceeding with construction or alteration of handrails. And to further see, move any of the dormer work or dormer scope to a HR-21-01-10C designation and be further continued. And to lastly go on file and record as part of this motion is supporting the applicant's potential application or seeking a variance for parking at this location.
Okay, thank you. So you basically made a motion as A, B, and C, correct?
I've clarified what's in A, removed the dormer to
Okay.
C, and then gone on to add some conditions and defer the or put something on record for support of a parking variance.
Okay, so we need 2 votes?
You just made
Or-
three
or-
motions.
I did it as
B-
one motion.
Yeah,
Unless you want
B
to-
is already staff approvals.
Yeah.
B is already staff approvals, so I mean,
Okay,
he made them both, so you could vote A and C as one, as far as I'm concerned.
okay, sounds good. Do I have a second for A and C?
Stuart Gibney, second.
Okay, we have a motion by Joe McCabe and a second. And so any further discussion? Okay, so I guess we can do this with one vote then. Aaron Prosser,
Yes.
Joseph McCabe,
Yes.
Stuart Gibney,
Yes.
Yes.
and Clyde Henry also votes yes. So the motion carries. Thank you. Good luck. And if you get your variance, I guess we'll see you next month.
Appreciate it, everyone. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah. Thank you. Our next item up is item 2, 664 Oakwood Avenue. Connie, will you take us through this?
Yes, so installation of new windows at 664 Oakwood Avenue and other improvements at the fire damaged dwelling were approved by the commission in June 2020. A window quote was submitted and approved by staff. So they are requesting to install windows as they have been ordered based on downsized rough opening measurements provided in the windows quote. So a windows quote was submitted and approved by staff with staff's understanding that the quote was based on original rough opening measurements, as the windows do not appear to be downsized in the approved drawings. I'm not an architect, so the commission will have to, comment on that. Any changes to COAs or approved drawings require additional review by the commission or by staff. Reframing of some windows was reported to 311. HPO staff was notified by code enforcement on December 29th, and new windows have been ordered but not installed or received, I don't think. Recommend that all new windows match the original roof openings, as the size and details of window openings are distinguishing characteristics of historic properties. Based on 3116.11, replacement of missing architectural features shall be based on accurate duplications of features. Downsized window openings are not compatible with the size or scale of the property.
Okay, and we did not approve the downsizing of any of the windows. Is that correct?
Well, as I said, if the commission does not think that the approved elevation drawings, which maybe Alex can bring those up separately. I was having some trouble getting all of these things linked together. I do not think that the drawings show them to be downsized.
Okay, but it's not called out as being downsized, nor did the application specifically ask for downsizing.
No. Mm-mm.
Okay. Application here this evening.
Bill Davis.
Okay, would you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth in your testimony for the evening? If so, say, I do, state your name and your association with the project.
Bill Davis. I'm the general contractor.
Thank you. Would you like to add to the presentation?
Yeah, but I guess this is my first rodeo on a project of this scale, and I was of the understanding when the plans were submitted, they had the header changes on the second floor, which where the primary window opening variations are, and when I submitted the window order, they were in compliance with the wood and so on. I was not of the understanding that I had to apply for a second application for the windows to be downsized, since I thought that was on the blueprints that were submitted. That particular picture you're looking at right now is a laundry room window, and that's why it's made like that, and that's in the blueprints.
Bring up can up of that, the elevations of that particular window. Where is it on the house here?
I believe that's, let me look here. I believe that one is third window from the right.
On which elevation?
On a, let's see, number 2, south elevation.
Okay. Put up.
Oh, you know what?
That's on the ground floor?
Let me go back and look at that picture again. That, I think that one's over the kitchen sink, pardon me.
And that would be where?
Let me give me 1 second here. That would be on elevation number 4.
North elevation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me see.
Would it be
I'm
the one
sorry.
in front there?
I'm terribly sorry. I'm mistaken again. I'm working off my iPhone, so I'm really out here. Give me 1 moment, please.
Well, let me just ask you this. Some windows that are being downsized are on the ground floor, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. As I look at the elevation, and again, I'm looking at it very small, I see windows on no lines showing that you're enclosing. I see no indication of the fill-in, the 2x4 structure, anything that would indicate that the windows are being changed or that you're adding additional wall.
Well, again, I'm not the architect on this. I guess what I was shooting for was to try and present or order windows that were in compliance with the elevation. And if you look at the various elevations, all the window sizes are fairly consistent with the sill height and the top of the windows. So they look like all in elevation.
A reasonable person looking at this drawing would conclude that those windows were replacements of the original windows, the original size, because there's no indication as to anything else on there. If those windows were approved, fill in underneath of changing of original material approved, that would leave you with an open under, which wouldn't function very well now, would it?
No, that's correct. And I think the primary differences are more on the second floor than they were on the first floor, because there was it's got a 9-foot ceiling on the first floor, and so the window heights and sills were fairly consistent all the way across the board. There might have been like an inch difference, but those were fairly consistent. It's the second story where the engineer said we had to put in 8-inch headers over all the windows, which lowered the height of the window. And if you look at the illustration again, the elevations, they all look about the same style and height. And so I knew the windows were going to be shorter on the second floor, and the sill height on the second floor windows varied from like 12 3/4 inches to 16 inches. So I was just trying to bring everything up to consistency with what appeared to be on the elevations.
Right. I understand that you were submitting windows that were smaller than the original windows. What I can't find is where you communicated that request for a variance to us.
Oh, see, I didn't realize. I'm working with an architect, so I didn't realize that wasn't communicated, to be honest with you.
To me, Clyde, this seems like there's scope not identified. The applicant sort of represented one scope of work, they've done another, and this seems to be a claim with them and their architect they're going to need to have to deal with on their own. I don't know that we have no ruling over what your architect did not show as scope, and we made a specific decision to support something based on what was actually presented to us. If you do a different scope, that's your business to coordinate with your architect, not our responsibility to oversee your architect. It honestly, on these drawings, says nothing about downsizing windows, filling windows, adjusting trim. I mean, it doesn't even, what you've showed us is you've got framed openings downsized with no trims even on them anymore. There's none of that detail here represented. It shows simply replacing windows. So there's a scope disconnect that's happened here. And that's really between you and your architect to get the right scope in front of this body for approval and review.
Okay.
Right.
So I guess I didn't realize that. We need to go back and revisit that. Right now, I've got a bunch of windows that are ready for delivery next Wednesday. Like I said, the first floor windows are all pretty much what was originally there, because there was no header modification needed because of the height that was already there. On the second floor, we had to change the header heights. And what I understand you're saying is we needed to call that out and ask for a variance on the window opening because of that, correct?
Generally, other ways to handle that, granted a variance on something like that. I guess my feeling is, if you have windows that meet the exact size of the original windows with no infill, those specific windows, I would not oppose installing, but I don't know how to between those windows where you put infill in, and I wouldn't want to have a situation develop where someone drives out there and all the windows are in and it's all covered up, and now we don't know which windows were the exact size of which weren't. So I don't know how to resolve that. Maybe one of the other commissioners has a idea of how to safely navigate these waters.
Chair Henry?
Yes.
I could, Alex, could you put up the one photo? It's of a large window on the side, and it has the trim ghosting around it, or it does there too. There. So, I can meet with them on site. You see the trim on the bottom window there, the header there. That should be, that's what your window should match. You know, that's what needs to be on the outside. You know, that trim there, and with the molding at the top, and the same thing at the bottom. I guess we can't see the bottom, but that ghosting there shows what size the window should be. Where there, yeah. So the sill is there.
I mean,
I think my primary question is why is this different than the folks we've had before us that have altered the work from what was approved, and what our typical benchmark for that is, whether or not we would have approved this as an application had it come before us in an understandable way. Clyde, to your point, it wasn't indicated to us that there is. So if I think about it in that context, I'm not clear on what reason we would have to vary the opening sizes.
No. What I'm saying on the windows where there would be no size change. He said that some of the windows on the ground floor, obviously not the one we're looking at, indeed do match the original opening, which we would have approved a window matching the original opening. At this point, looking at what's been done, I would find it hard to approve those one or two windows that may fit the original opening. So I would like to see a resubmission personally, but I want to know what other commissioners think.
Yeah, I think we've spent quite a lot of time on this. And I think that is probably okay, as we have someone who's new to working in historic districts. But sir, I think that what needs to happen next is you need to go back to your architect, and you all need to spend a little bit of time learning about what it takes to work in a historic district. And I empathize. It takes a little bit more. So you'll have to. You need to prepare yourself that you're not going to be able to install I can't speak for all the commissioners, but I'll be shocked if you're able to install those smaller windows into larger openings. That is not a precedent that has typically worked here. Typically you come and you get approved and then you order the windows, and it's not just for windows. So if you've got other work that you're getting ready to do on the exterior, make sure you talk to Connie first before you order materials. When you work in a historic district, that's kind of the order of things.
Well,
so I'll just say that's kind of how things work, and it can be kind of a rough entry if you've never done it before and you didn't know.
Yeah, I think Connie will attest. We're certainly trying. We handmade all the siding so it matches what's there, and I'm custom building all the basement windows to match what was there. And so we're doing our level best to be in compliance. And the owners really would like to buy other properties, and our commitment is to do it right. And past that, I don't want to waste any more of your time, other than to say our heart is in the right place. We're trying to be really good players and team players on this thing. So,
thank you.
Sounds good. Does the commissioners feel like it's probably appropriate to continue this, and then we can take it up at the next meeting with a full, complete submission?
I agree 100%. I think that's the way to go, is to continue this case, and then in the meantime, the applicant can submit revised drawings prepared by the architect that really reflects where you are today. Even, give us the honest scenarios of everything, what was there, what's going to be done, and have the scope thoroughly detailed out. Include details of trim, sill, head, what's going to be on the outside, because right now we have no detail of what's going back at all.
Okay.
Picture framing the window. I don't feel comfortable with making any decision at this point.
Sure.
We can't even figure out which ones are downsized, upsized. Any existing conditions, unusual scenarios where we have to provide you with a variance from what we would normally do, the rationale or why. But we need full window details at this point, I think, and not that's represented in the package we have.
Okay, one question I have for the trim above the windows, does that all have to be wood?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I need to know.
Yes. You're talking about the exterior, the outside.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, do I hear a motion to continue?
So moved.
Okay, Joseph McCabe made a motion to continue. Do I,
Second.
Stuart Gibney, made a second. Any further discussion? If not, I will call the roll call. Jackie Barton,
Yes.
Yes.
Joseph McCabe,
Yes.
Aaron Prosser,
Yes.
and myself, Clyde Henry, also votes yes. I do difficulty with starting a project, and ordering stuff. And, but the commission needs to be consistent and with what we've done other years with other homes, so that everybody's treated the same and that we adhere to what the code is. The exceptions are very extreme situations with reasons and documentations, which are within the code. But normally, we need to be consistent. Looks like it'll be a beautiful home when done. I'm glad you're taking on this project, and hope we see you next month with the submissions.
Okay.
So, best of luck.
Mhm.
To item number 3. And item number 3 is 1711 Brighton Road.
Okay, so construction of a new 2-story, 2-family dwelling and a 2-car garage was approved September 17, 2020. Building design and site plan are consistent with 3116.12, standards for new construction. Variance number, you have 4 variances here. Variance number 2, lot width is an existing condition. Variance number 1, 3, and 4 to permit a 2-unit dwelling and reduce setbacks are consistent with historic recent development patterns within the Brighton Road Historic District. Recommend an affirmative recommendation for the requested variances because the building design and site plan were previously approved by the Commission, and the requested variants are consistent with historic and recent development patterns within the district.
Thank. Is there anyone here this evening to speak the project?
Yes, I am, Chair Henry. It's Dave Perry for the applicant.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth in your testimony before the commission this evening? If so, say I do. And you're...
I do. My name is Dave Perry. I'm a consultant on the zoning aspects of this project.
Great. Is there anything you'd like to add?
No, the application is, as stated, the zoning variance application is catching up with what the HRC has approved, and there was a similar application about 2 years ago by a different property owner for a slightly different application, but very similar variances that was approved by HRC and City Council also. So this is a to a large degree a repeat.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any questions or concerns?
Has this gone through the neighborhood commission?
Yes, it has.
Great.
Near East Area Commission approved.
I remember this this design. I'm ready to make a motion if we don't have a lot of
Great.
questions.
Okay. Go ahead and make the motion.
Well, I don't want to circumvent our commissioner friends who may have questions.
You're good. Good.
Y'all look like they're ready.
Great. All right. In the case of HR 210112, 985 and 987 Brighton Road. Recommend approval of a request for variance recommendations. Connie, do you want me to mention the sections for variance?
No, you don't need to.
Okay,
Mhm.
as listed
Smith.
in the agenda. How's that?
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, I will call the roll. Aaron Prosser,
Yes.
Joseph McCabe,
Yes.
Stuart Givney,
Yes.
Jackie Barton,
Yes.
and I, Clyde Henry, also vote yes. The motion carries. Congratulations and nice project. Good seeing you.
Very good. Thank you.
We are up to our last item for review, 300 Kelton Avenue, and this is a conceptual review. Connie, can we take us?
Right, this is construction of a new single-family dwelling on a currently vacant lot, and the variance request also. Revised drawings with the following comments were submitted following the January 7th business meeting. And so those drawings, the changes included that the front fenestration was simplified to be more in rhythm with the neighborhood. The porch cover was pulled slightly forward of the front mass to more closely resemble the overlap side porches in the area. The front rear wall of the front porch was moved further into the mass to enlarge the porch, and sheet A23 was added with images of nearby buildings. Staff comments are that the simplification of facade windows, pulling the porch forward, and brick facade or moving more toward relating to existing contributing structures. The front mass of the second floor above the porch does not seem consistent with existing houses. It's kind of pulled forward more than other similar houses. Staff does not support a new curb cut or driveway as it interrupts the historic pattern of streets, alleys, and sidewalks, and is not guided by the streetscape provided by adjacent and visually related structures and open spaces. In addition, the Near East plan states that new curb cuts should be discouraged, and attached garages with doors facing the street are not acceptable in those neighborhoods built prior to 1940. So this is just for comments.
Okay, thank you. Is there a representative of the application here this evening? Or more
Cheryl?
There are two representatives here.
There are two. Okay, will you both raise your hand? And do you swear to tell the truth in your testimony before the commission this evening? If so, say I do, and state your name, your association with the project. And David, why don't you start? Or why don't you swear in first?
I do. Dave Perry, consultant on the project for the zoning application.
Okay, and
I'm Carrick Sherrill. I'm the project architect, and I do as well.
okay, great. Thank you so much. Is there something that add to the presentation?
I think if we could break the project down into kind of four components in order of what's going to make the project completely change or not. I'd like to start there, and that would be A, the curb cut, B, the front-facing garage, even though it's, you know, some 50 feet off of the street. The narrow footprint of the building in relationship to the immediate adjacent buildings, and then the obviously the architectural style. So I don't know if, you know, each commissioner wants to address those items individually, but obviously without, you know, if everybody's against the curb cut, you know, it kind of is going to change the whole project altogether. And there's not too much point in talking about the other things. And if you'd recall, we pointed out I forget the address, but one block to the west, there was a similar home that has a curb cut in nearly the exact same location, the first parcel behind the parcel on Brighton. So I would point to that as I don't want to say precedent, but certainly the reason why we would believe that a curb cut at this location would be appropriate.
Carrick, let's touch base just briefly on the condition also, because there was a slight bit of confusion about that at the business meeting. This parcel does not have alley access. So this isn't just a decision for convenience to have a curb cut and the garage oriented the way it is, but there is no alley abutting this parcel. And at the business meeting, the discussion then turned to comparable parcels, not parcels in general that have alley access, because if this had alley access, Carrick would have designed it with a garage access from the alley, but the discussion turned to other parcels that don't have alley access, and there's the parcel that Carrick mentioned, and there are quite a few lots that don't have alley access within the Near East Commission area.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, I think the point that we should probably discuss the drive access first, because if that's a no-go, the design's a no-go. So that's kind of issue. So why don't we talk about that first?
Clyde, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Dave, has this been before NEAC? Have you guys had any conversations with NEAC about this yet?
Yes, we are not done with the NEAC process, but NEAC, if you're not familiar, NEAC has a 4-stage review process, and all new construction starts with the NEAC Planning Committee. So Carrick and I have been to the NEAC Planning Committee, and there was certainly was some discussion, but given relative to the driveway, there was support for the driveway cut and the orientation, again, because of the conditions of the lot and not having alley access.
Okay.
So I would offer the following commentary, Clyde, which is, I think, breaking this down into smaller digestible chunks for review is the smartest way to go. I don't object to the curb cut, given the lot conditions, the precedent for other side scenarios like this. I think for me, it's more about the attached garage and the door being seen directly in line language rather than the fact that there's a curb cut. Curb cut, I get it. I can live with it. We've got a plan for growth. It's not, I don't, if this house disappeared in 20 years and the curb cut went away again, it would never impact the district to that degree of any historic integrity being harmed, in my opinion, as a single commissioner. I have more problems with the bricks and mortar look of, the architecture itself and the concept of an attached garage not fitting the neighborhood than I do about the curb cut. So I think I'm supportive of one. I think there's a different dialogue about the design. So that's my piece for that moment.
Okay. Other commissioners? Jackie, any comments?
I can live with the initially was someone who was uncomfortable with it, but when we looked at the situation, I wanted them off of an alley. I didn't realize they didn't have one. So I could make peace with this, given their situation, how the site is situated, to make this lot developable. Yeah. So I think we might have some thoughts, but that does not say, that's just purely the curb cut question and the driveway, I think I can live with that.
Okay.
If that doesn't mean that every Nary side parcel is to be chopped up, because I hear staff's concern, and
Aaron?
Yeah, I think for me, if NEAC doesn't have significant heartburn over this particular curb cut, understanding you're only at the planning committee, I've been through the 4-step process many times myself. I think if there was really concern over it, I think you'd be hearing it already. That makes me feel more comfortable, because it is really tiny. That recommendation isn't really about our guidelines, but about the NEAC plan, correct?
That's
city. Yes, correct.
The city plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, to me, I'm not gonna. For me, that's not a question. I'll defer. I would defer that question to NEAC, honestly. So I don't have a lot of heartburn on it.
Okay. Stuart, do you have any feelings on the curb cut, I mean?
Connie, can you reiterate the perspective from the city on behalf of the commission, or I'm sorry, the preservation office?
Basically that we support trying to maintain the historic pattern of streets, sidewalks, alleys, curbs, and so forth. So this would make a new cut into that curb and sidewalk. There's not the slope here, or else, I would be especially opposed to it, and I think the commission would be too, because you have not allowed retaining walls to interrupt that sloped the sloped front yards along Brighton Road. And the guidelines do not directly talk about the architectural guidelines do not directly talk about front-facing garages, but
right.
they don't mention them at all. So I think it's just not something that people considered that it would even be asked for. And I think when we revise guidelines, we will address that, but it's not in the guidelines now. But we would not support front-facing attached garages, or even attached garages at all. I'm not sure. There was some discussion in the last one about this is an urban area, so there doesn't need to be off-street parking. So I'm not quite sure how this one is changed from the discussion you just had about the one on Brighton Road.
Right.
I think the fact that the driveway goes in behind the adjacent buildings, almost in a position where an alley would traditionally go if the block was arranged differently, it really helps the situation. I would be concerned with the type of paving material. I think at the business meeting, someone brought up doing like a Hollywood Drive where you just have two concrete with grass in them. That would be, I think, something that you want to explore. It would certainly downplay the driveway and would seem to be more in scale with the neighborhood. But what I'm hearing the commissioner say is that the itself, it doesn't appear to be a main stumbling block. That's probably the biggest hurdle.
And
So
to clarify, Clyde, it is because there's not an alley in this particular parcel, not across the board.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. No, if there was I agree. If there was an alley behind there, there's no way we would even be looking at this. I've heard concern by several people about whether the garage can be attached, not attached. So let's kind of touch base on that a little bit. A concern. Anyone?
I think I'm actually less concerned about the physical attachment of the garage to the home than I am about the facing of the door. The lot is just too narrow to be able to maneuver into a side approached garage, regardless of whether it was attached or not attached. So I think the prevailing question would probably be that rather than whether it's attached or not attached.
I actually take exception to that only because I believe that planning language, when you look at an aerial of a neighborhood, it tells you a lot about a neighborhood and how things go. And when you really look at what this area is as a neighborhood, there's a lot of detached garages. Even when they are tight to houses or have other unique scenarios. I know there are other houses that have side entry garages, sorts of things going on that are not even on Brighton Road, but they're always a detached language. To me, it's that has to be a language item of planning 101. If we look at the top, if you look at top 5 or 10 guiding principles of a neighborhood, I would argue that along with a front porch are the two things that, I don't care what the porch looks like, but the concept of having a porch or the concept of having a garage and it's a detached garage are the big list, big items, the 20,000 foot view rather than the 300 foot view. So to me, that puts emphasis on the language of a historic neighborhood. I think if you're able to pull the house maybe forward a little bit, it looks like the house on either side of you sits forward to the street a little bit more. And then maybe if you're looking at the arrangement on the lot, maybe it can just, push back a little bit and then offer a disconnection. It doesn't have to, fully connect. That would suffice. I understand you may not be able to completely shield the door or make it turn onto the property. I think the best effort, though, needs to be that you need to do something, that it's just pulling in and down and just seeing a wall of a garage door, I don't think is the appropriate language here, or potentially just too much house for this lot.
Okay, other commissioners? It's on the garage? Okay, let's just sort of move on then to kind of all the other, any other comment on the design, windows, materials, anything that you may have concern with?
From the architectural perspective, the only comment I have is handrails. Handrails are extremely modern and are not consistent with the guidelines. We have to rule by not our personal opinion. If I were building my own house, I wasn't in a historic district, by the way, great house. But we have to guide by principle of the guidelines. It's not a personal decision on aesthetics. The guidelines are very specific on handrails. It's just that this sets up precedent for anybody doing a major remodel, addition, new construction moving forward, providing a handrail that would be completely opposite of what our guidelines say.
But Bill, so I'm going to admit I didn't bring my guideline sewing room because pandemic. Like where I can get away from everyone. But I thought that our guidelines said that with brand new construction, please somebody pull it up and read it, that contemporary design was one of the options that was discouraged. And so can somebody refresh me on that?
Yeah, it does say contemporary design, but it still gives specifics. And when it does quote specifics, I don't know how we can not rule by specifics of a guideline. And it talks about tickets and orientation and spacing, and we discuss handrails all the time with applicants who are replacing handrails.
So I guess my question is, by that standard, how would any new construction ever look contemporary? If we applied every guideline to new construction, no new construction would ever look contemporary.
I think looking contemporary is subjective.
I'm kind of with Jackie, Joe. I'm confused about the issue of the handrails.
I'm perfectly comfortable with this design, except I would like to see what it looks like with the materials. You know, right now it's in a black and white sketch, and the materials are called out with line items, you know, and I'll just be honest, I'd like to see it in color next to its friends and neighbors, because I think that matters. You know, we talked about brick, and I see that slide. Thank you, Alex. But I'd actually like to see it, because I think it matters to sort of how it fits in. I think that conversation we had at the business meeting about how the materials make it fit. For me, I'm comfortable with some of the changes that have been made to the home itself in terms of, I'd like to see it have more of a porch than it does even, but I appreciate the effort to give it more of one. And the handrails, I'm also not finding them to be terribly problematic. I think if you moved them to a vertical orientation instead of a horizontal orientation, you could, they would evoke, you know, if the pickets were a contemporary material, but they had a vertical orientation instead of a horizontal, you'd evoke maybe that historical feel, but have that contemporary look. But I think our guidelines leave room for contemporary build. So
Yeah,
that's my 2 cents.
I'm looking through the guidelines. It doesn't specify. It's, I mean, largely silent, I guess, but the overall tone is, you know, rhythms and things like that should be adhered to. But it doesn't specifically say you can't do a contemporary handrail.
But that's where I go back to the general principle. How is the steel handrail that's shown consistent with rhythm that's in this district? It's just for sake of every other new addition coming forward or new handrail coming forward not looking like this. How will we be able to not say we provided precedent for that?
I think we can investigate further the handrail and how to make it look more in keeping with other maybe metal handrails in the neighborhood. I think if we, with just responding to the colors, the color scheme is definitely intended to be very, very complementary, if not matchy with the adjacent properties. You know, red brick, you know, with generally neutral colors on the siding. But you know, that's certainly something that we can do for next month is bring a colored rendering.
And I'm only one voice, so you know. And I mean, clearly, we are giving you opposite feedback, so you're probably on your computer.
That's not the first time I've been to a historic commission where people didn't agree.
Joe's route is probably the safe route. I'm never going to tell you not to do historic handrails, but yeah.
And I
Does
do.
anyone have any? Oh, go ahead.
I do agree with Jackie and with Joe on the porch. Somewhere where it would be much more in line with the neighborhood to me, but
Does anyone have any comment on the, you know, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, in my opinion, but the roof in comparison with neighboring roofs that are all gabled, front gabled? Just to give them some input.
Yeah.
Well, they've done a fair, I have to say they've done a fair comparison of window placement and some massing concept to some historic homes. So I mean, they are trying to draw some parallel. You know, I guess I can't draw a parallel to the other homes in the neighborhood, but it's it's still modern. This is where I do think in some ways you break from contemporary. If you've got some of the other key things, the porch issue involved, you've got some window things that, have a rhythm compared to something else. I think I could live with the roof. I don't know if I'm upset by that.
Is there a fireplace plan for this house? Because all places in this neighborhood tend to have high chimneys going up, and a chimney help that rhythm there. But if there's no fireplace planned, then it's just not real, not worth doing. David, do you know if there's a fireplace planned or?
I was muted. I apologize. In the planning, I don't know if we've really developed the interior plan to the level of detail to know whether we would have a fireplace or not. I mean, we certainly, when we went to NEOC, it was pointed out that we needed to visit with you folks, and that raised some concerns for us just about the overall style of the building. So I think, this has been an excellent conversation, and gives us a lot of excellent feedback with which to work from, and irons out a few of the larger what ifs about this project. So I'd glad if any of you have further comments to give us, I'd gladly hear them. But I think we have some great feedback with which to further refine this design and come back.
Okay. Does anybody want to make any final comment?
Yeah, just I'll give you just one, because you're going from conceptual hopefully into something more and coming back again from next iteration. In the historic districts, I often struggle with the vertical pattern siding because there's no precedent with it. I don't mind variations on horizontal sidings, brick. I think you've done a good job. You're breaking a lot of you're breaking a lot of aesthetic boundaries, I should say, in this design. It just, the use of the vertical kind of batten stuff, to me, doesn't speak to this particular district. If it were an older mid-1800s district, maybe you could even push it to that point. I don't know if I see much of that in the Brighton Road district specifically. But that's an easy, probably finish change. I think that wouldn't get passing or anything.
Certainly. It seems there's shake and fish scale in the near vicinity to use as an accent in this particular building, potentially.
Yeah.
I would even say that what you've got fish scale and some other things. There are some new fun kinds of textured sidings out there. You can claim that there's a rhythm and a pattern with a new texture too. If you're going to go divorce it and have fun with it and push a contemporary agenda, I'm also willing to live with something that said we can draw a parallel to something else with reason.
Sure.
I don't want to limit your creative opportunity here,
Right, and the issue of contemporary items have come up before, and one of the things that we want to see is design. We don't want to see a design that's watered down and become beige. And sometimes that's what, I'm an architect, and sometimes architects think that it's a historical district, and so we want to see dulled down nothingness, and we don't. The neighborhood has great design, and we want your design to be great also. And we're certainly willing to want, and the commission, in fact, says contemporary designs are acceptable. And I think you've gotten that feedback tonight. So we look forward to seeing your design, and we hope and believe it's going to be great. Thank you.
Could I just ask, Based on the commissioner's comments, it appears that you wouldn't have any issue with any of the proposed variances.
Other commissioners, is that what everyone's feeling?
I have to look at the list before I can answer that question.
Mhm.
Sorry.
They're up on the screen now.
I'm on my phone. Help me.
I honestly think that they might, by the time they look at porch studies or looking at how a porch maybe addresses somebody actually sitting on a porch, I'm a fan of actually supporting even greater variance in order to achieve architecture that fits in a historic district. So I have no problem with the variances even being to a higher degree requested than proposed.
We appreciate the feedback on the variances, and particularly if there's something objectionable. I will say if with possibly pulling the house forward or whatever, however Carrick decides to proceed on the design, or if the garage becomes detached even by a small amount, yards are calculated differently with attached and detached. So if there's something objectionable in the variances, certainly tell us, but we should probably defer voting on the variances until we're back.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, but I think conceptually, we've provided the input that you need, and so we're going to move on to the next item. And on conceptual reviews, we don't vote. We just
Clyde, can I just say one more thing?
Thank you.
absolutely.
You were saying something about good design, and Connie had asked about the roof line. I actually feel like this design would be weaker if the roof line wasn't. I mean, I'm sure it would be good with a number of roof lines, perhaps, but I actually feel like that sort of sideways roof line, sort of shed roof, um, is a strong statement on this building. So I just wanted to say that. I was just trying to imagine it if you made that top gabled, and I think it would actually make it look like it was sort of a sad invitation of its friends and neighbors.
Right.
So, 2 cents for what it's worth.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, and running it at the same angle as the neighbors really wouldn't give you any, even as a shed roof at that steep of an angle, it wouldn't give you any usable space. So, yeah, I'm okay with that too.
Yeah, Alex, if you go to the next page, A23, and then look at that party overlay there. I mean, what I was really trying to show there was how that, how that roof line, it really does kind of imagine a shed dormer on the side of a gabled roof. I mean, obviously it's a contemporary version of it without the hip in front of it. However, we don't just try to make up stuff out of thin air. It comes from somewhere. So it's kind of the intent behind that, I guess.
Okay.
Well, we certainly appreciate your time tonight.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And good luck, and we look forward to seeing the final versions of this. So,
What's just out of curiosity? What's your timetable on this? This is one of the more exciting new looking things coming.
Well, we've got some work to do with some utilities to work with staff about how we're going to work through some hurdles there. And then, we've got the NEAC process, which is several months. So, I could see coming back here either next month or the following, depending on the hurdles of the utilities. And then, it'd be great to be kind of permitting mid to late summer-ish and maybe even starting construction this year.
Sounds good.
All right,
Okay,
thank you.
next,
Thank you.
thank you. The next item on the agenda is old business. Is there any old business?
I don't have anything.
Okay, and is there any new business?
I don't have anything.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Commissioner Gibney.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Jackie, I'll take as a second. So let us vote. Jackie Barton,
Yep.
Stuart Gibney,
Yes.
Joseph McCabe,
Yes.
Aaron Prosser,
Yes.
and Clyde Henry also vote yes. Therefore, this meeting is adjourned.